One of our S's in GoSox stands for spread. And we talked about in previous lessons how one of our measures of spread is standard deviation. So how can we use standard deviation? What's it good for? Besides just telling us how spread out the data are. Well, let's take a look at this scenario. Mr. Mays, we know by now I'm a Star Wars freak. So I've got two Star Wars characters here. This guy over here, he's an Ewok, and his name is Wicket. And then I hope you recognize over here we've got a Wookiee, and this is the most famous Wookiee ever, Chewbacca. We'll just call him Chewie. So there's Chewbacca. Maybe a little bit later on I'll do my Chewbacca voice. So here's the scenario that we have. Mr. Mays, being the Star Wars freak that he is, thinks about things like this. So the mean height of an Ewok is 37.5 inches with a standard deviation of 1.8 inches. The mean height of an adult Wookiee is 85.5 inches with a standard deviation of 5.2 inches. This data, based on information obtained by the Galactic Empire Database, the GED, okay, that is based on their findings. So, who is relatively taller? Wicket, whose height is 39.5 inches, or Chewbacca, whose height is 88.5 inches. So, which one is relatively taller? Again, Mr. Mace thinks about things like this. So, one of the things that you should always do when you're looking at problems like this is maybe circle things or highlight things. So I'm going to take and highlight the information about the Ewoks, the mean height being 37.5 and with a standard deviation of 1.8 inches. And then Wicket's height is 39.5 inches. That just helps keep me organized. And then I'll use yellow for the Wookiees. The mean height of a Wookiee is 85.5 inches with a standard deviation of 5.2 inches. And Chewbacca here is 88.5 inches tall. So that's just to help me stay organized. If you don't have colors or anything, you could always just circle or underline to help keep you organized. Well, how am I going to compare these two? Which one is relatively taller? Obviously, Chewbacca is taller. He's 88.5 inches, whereas Wicket is only 39.5 inches tall. It's obvious that Chewie is taller, but which one is relatively taller? Well, in order to figure out which one is relatively taller when we're dealing with two sets of data, I've got the Wookiee data and the Ewok data. How can I make those comparisons? Well, we can make those comparisons, or we can compare these data by standardizing our data. So how do we standardize our data? Well, we have to use something called a z-score. Here's our definition of a z-score. A z-score represents the number of standard deviations that a data value is from the mean. So a z-score is like a ruler, okay? A z-score is like a ruler or a unit of measurement, okay? A z-score represents the number of standard deviations that a particular data value is away from the mean. And there is a formula for z-scores. The formula for a z-score is this right here. Z equals the data value that you're concerned with. So right here is our data value. That's the one that we're worried about, or the one that we're considering. And then x bar, we should remember that x bar is the mean. And in this case, it's the sample mean. So right there, x bar. And then S, we should remember, is standard deviation. We know all of this information from the data above. So we're going to go ahead and use the information that we have above in our formula for z-scores to help us figure out which one is relatively taller. Is Chewbacca relatively taller? Yeah, that was Mr. Mays doing his Chewbacca impression. Or is Wicket the Ewok relatively taller? I don't have a good Ewok impression. He kind of talks like, And he sings a yub yub song. So throughout this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at z-scores. So you should know this formula and know that a z-score represents the number of standard deviations that a data value is from the mean. It's like a ruler. It's a measurement. And you should also know the formula for a z-score. So we'll take a look at that as we go through this lesson.